Hey, are you business owner or entrepreneur and you still feel shy to present or sometimes you get an anxiety? I get an anxiety at times, but not that much. Now I still can speak and talk to you guys. And I'm not talking about myself. My name is Mohammed Bashir. I am founder of Entrepreneur Empowerment Club. Today my guest is best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and he is featured in Forbes Top 100 Podcasters. Please help me welcome Mark Metry. Welcome, Mark.
Mohammed, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for creating this platform. And I appreciate everyone tuning in today, this morning, or whatever time it is for you listening.
Let me start with this. Where were you? What happened? Who are you surrounded with that inspired you to do what you do today?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me personally, I'm Egyptian and my family and I, we moved to America. And personally for me, I was always very entrepreneurial. When I was a kid, the internet, social media was coming up. So I would always launch all kinds of different online businesses and so on and so forth. And really, what inspired me to do what I do today is I reached this moment in my life where I was successful on paper. I had all the money and the finances that I worked hard for to get, but at the end of the day, I still felt like a loser. I still felt like I was always anxious. I feel like I could never truly be myself without having an anxiety attack. And so ever since I experienced that, that really led me to understand that this is a very important skill set in terms of how to train your mind, because that's going to then end up how you communicate, how other people perceive you. And a lot of people, they look at the things that I've been able to do today, from give a TEDx talk to be featured on Forbes, to interview over 300 of the world's most successful people, many of which are entrepreneurs, like the co-founder of Netflix. And a lot of people ask me, like, how did you do it? And by far, it really had to do with me training my brain to not be shy, to be confident, to have energy, to not be depressed. And it took me a long, long time. And so that's why I do what I do today,
So
if that makes sense.
yeah, it's a wonderful. That's very inspiring story. That leads to my next question. What are top three mistakes to avoid?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it depends who you are and what you're trying to do. In terms of business owners, I think what a very common mistake that I see people doing is I see business owners, they wake up first thing in the morning and they check their phone. They're trying to constantly maintain their business. They're trying to grow their business. It's very, very hard. It's very, very stressful. And I think a lot of the times it's a very common tendency for the business owner to either just say, "Oh, my health doesn't really matter. It's all about the business because that's what supports my family." And yeah, the business is very important, but I think a lot of the times when it comes to long-term success, you really have to work on your own physical health, your own mental health, your own self-development if you truly want to have a successful business. And then the thing is even if you do have a successful business, but your health is in the trash, it's not going to mean anything to you. And so, yeah, of course, like your family and your customers, they may be better provided. But if you're depressed, if you're burnt out, if you have health problems as a result of all that stress, then it's not really going to mean much to you. So I think that's like the number one mistake that I see people do, because it's exactly what I did. I think number two, the biggest mistake that I've seen that I think people should avoid is I think a lot of the times, maybe it's just people who I talk to who are shy, or maybe even are introverts or have social anxiety. It's a very common theme to just sort of put your head down and just work and not talk to anybody. And you can do that. That's fine. But the reality is, like, you need some form of communication. You need some form of community where you and other people can get together and talk about things that are interesting to you. Doesn't have to be every day, but I think that's really, really, really important. And to talk to people, things that aren't necessarily business related. I think that's a big, big, big thing. Number three is I think the biggest mistake that other people make is they don't do what they want to do. They don't become the person who they want to be, because they're not consistent, they're not focused. One day they have a goal, the next day they have a different goal, the other day they have a different goal, they have different stresses that pop up, they forget what they're even doing. And so I think a lot of the times, one of the biggest mistakes is people are not consistent enough, right? So a lot of people, for example, they try to start podcasts, right? And they do the podcast, they record 5 episodes or they record 10 episodes. And then they're like, oh, no one's listening to this. And they don't do it consistently enough. And they say, oh, wow, I failed. I'm never going to be successful. And so I think those three things are the most important, from like one, making sure that you don't neglect your health for the sake of your business. Number two, trying to be communicative and have some sort of a social community group where you can talk, nothing to do with business. And then number three is no consistency. And that a lot of times that has to do with health issues, because a lot of the times when people wake up and they feel tired, that mostly has to do with your brain, and you can retrain your brain to give you more energy, to be more consistent, to be more focused. And these are really all skills that people can learn. And personally for me, um, I I used to be the dumbest person. I could never focus on anything. I had no energy. I was always lazy and tired. And it really wasn't until I realized, like, oh, my brain is a machine. And the same way that your computer is a machine and you can reprogram it, you can also reprogram your brain, which then will help you in your business, help you with your family, and just your life in general. If that makes sense.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. It's so beautifully said. Let me move to my next question. What is your greatest failure story? What did you learn and how did you recover from it?
I have so many failures. I have so many failures. I mean, I honestly just feel like I failed for really the first 18 years of my life. I got terrible grades in school. I had health issues. I barely had any friends. I was mean to people. I honestly view that, just my life experience for the first 18 years, as a failure, right? But if anything that I've learned is that, um, like, I think a lot of times when it comes to school, for example, right? If you fail a class, you have to take it over again. And I think what I've learned in life is that all successful people, all of them, for every like one success that you see, there's always like at least 9 failures behind them. And so that's a very common theme of like people who are successful. It's not that they don't fail, it's just that they fail again and again and again and again and again until they sort of learn, or maybe they need to be like, wow, I need to do something totally different. And then that ends up teaching them how to be successful. And so I think for me, my biggest failure is just every single day showing up not as myself, every single day showing up as like this robot who just like was quiet and didn't talk to people and did what other people told me to do, but not do what I really wanted to do deep down. And so I think that for me is by far the biggest failure, because that stopped me from being myself. And I think that's one of the most important things that you can do, because if you lose yourself, if you're not yourself, nothing in life matters, because you're not going to be able to truly feel the happiness and the enjoyment of your accomplishments if you even do become successful when you do. And so I think that's one of the biggest failures and lessons that I've learned, if that makes sense.
That's perfectly said. So let's move to success now. Enough about failures. What are your top three success secrets that others can follow?
Success secrets that other people can follow. That's a good question. Um, well, here's what I would say. I would say that right now we're living in a time in human history where we have never had more opportunity. And we live in a time where, the average person has a supercomputer in their pocket that's more powerful than the United States president had like 50 years ago. And I think with this opportunity, you have two choices. Okay. You can basically use your phone or use technology to what I call distract and destroy, right? You can use technology to, you know, feed addictions, to distract yourself, to destroy your attention span, to pay attention to things that are not good for your mental health. Or you can literally use your phone to start a business, to change people's lives, to learn new skills, to make income, to surround yourself with people who are just like you. So I think that's like one of the biggest secrets. And I think it's really important to say that because I think a lot of times people are now viewing technology as just sort of like negative. It's a bad thing, or social media, but yet everybody is on it like every single day. And so I think a lot of the times you have to look at it from the more positive lens and just like realize the opportunity that you have. And it's really important to be reminded of that because I know for myself, I sometimes forget all the time too. So I think that's a huge secret. Number two is, here's what I would say. It's really important that you are able to take care of your mind and your brain. I think a lot of the times, uh, there's a huge emphasis on your mind. Oh, you have to upgrade your mindset, your mind, your mind. Your mind is definitely very important. But I think often what gets neglected in the conversation is your brain. And what I've learned is that your mind is what so if your brain is the organ, your mind is what lives in that organ. And I think a lot of us, because of just modern lifestyle and technology, a lot of us have developed bad habits and live in bad environments that are not good for our brain. And so I think it's really important that you take care of your brain. And like the most simple way to do that, just the very, very basic foundation, is your diet, the food that you eat, your exercise, your sleep, and the amount of sunlight that you get outside and the vitamin D absorption that your brain receives. At the most basic level, that's how you take care of your brain. And so I think a lot of people are just sort of focused and obsessed with their mindset and their mind. And yeah, of course, your mind, your mindset is very important, but your brain is what powers your mind. And a lot of the times, what I've seen in most cases, that people will have a brain issue that actually hijacks their mind. It controls their mind. So then that's like a number two in terms of a secret that I've learned. And then number three, in terms of a secret, is like nobody cares who you are. And what I mean to say that is like when I first started, when I had 0 followers on LinkedIn, when I didn't even have my podcast, I was always worried about like, oh, what are people going to think of me because I'm young? Or what are people going to do that? What are people? And at the end of the day, it literally does not matter. If you just put your head down and you're healthy and you hustle and you take the right actions every day, then years later, people will recognize your success for you. And I promise you that like no one is going to think that you're illegitimate or that you're not good enough. Maybe some people, but people will always think what people think. And so I think that's been one of the biggest secrets too, of like people may see, someone like you, Muhammad, or someone like me, or someone like, someone else who's successful, and like, wow, how did they get there? Man, I could never do that. When it's like, no, you just have to sort of build every day. And if you can look back years later, I promise you, no one is going to care about how you got there. As long as you didn't like, steal anything or like do anything, illegal or anything like that, I think you're fine. So I think that's a big thing. Because I think once you understand that, then you realize, oh, I can actually do anything I want to. I can actually be whoever I want to. So I think that's another secret that's golden that I wish I knew before.
Thank you. Let's move to a speed round. That
Oh,
means
man.
short questions and quick answers. Mark, are you ready for it?
I thought we were ready in the speed round, man. I'm ready.
What is the most impactful business book you have read, and what did you learn from it?
So, I never read books ever. The only books that I read were the ones in school that they assigned me. But to be honest with you, I didn't even read them. I would just like read the summaries online. So literally, the first book I truly ever read because I wanted to was Think and Grow Rich. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of this book. It's like a classic. And this was really the book that taught me that you can change life and you can change everything about life and your future. And I still remember sitting down in like 2016, like reading this book and be like, oh my god, like oh my god, this is and it really changed my life. And but again, some people may not like the book, so it depends on the person. But I think Think and Grow Rich is the best, not the best, but it's the most impactful book that I personally read for my own life journey.
Mark, as we know that you are a best-selling author yourself, please show us your book and why people should read it.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm the author of the book Screw Being Shy. It's also an audiobook on Audible. And really the reason why I wrote this book was the year before COVID in 2019. I got to speak in every major city in the US in America. And what was really interesting is that every single event, every single city that I would go to, the same exact thing would happen. There would always be at least one person who would walk up to me after my talk, after my speech, and I would notice they would be very shy. Maybe they wouldn't make eye contact with me. Maybe they would be stuttering. Maybe they'd be shaking. And they would ask me the same exact question. They said, Mark, how did you go from someone who couldn't talk to people, who was debilitatingly shy, who was never confident, to be able to go on stage and talk about and, be vulnerable with your life story in front of hundreds of people? And when that happened to me, I was like, maybe I should write a book about this because this is happening to me again and again and again and again. And so if people are shy, if people have social anxiety, if people feel like they can never be themselves in front of other people, be who they want to be, they should read this book to understand the root cause and the exact steps that they can take to get out of it.
Wonderful. What do you want to be remembered for?
That's a great question. I want to be remembered for anybody who has faced any of the issues that I have faced, being poor, being discriminated against, having social anxiety, not talking, being quiet. I want everyone who's experienced those issues, who feels like they don't have a voice and they're stuck in sort of an invisible prison. I want them to know that someone out there, just like them, me, has been able to get out of that prison. So that's what I want to be remembered for.
How do you overcome a challenge life throws at you?
Um, well, I think life is synonymous with the word challenges. Life is all about challenges. You're never going to enter in a spot in your life where you don't have challenges. Like literally tomorrow, if you wake up and you have a six pack, you're ripped, you have $55 billion in your bank account, your family loves you, you're still going to have problems. You're still going to have challenges. You may have different kinds of challenges. So I think for me, the way that I deal with challenges is just by understanding this is what life is. Life is challenges. And my ability to deal with challenges will then control my life. And for example, like ever since 2016, 2017, when I really transformed my life, I have had way more challenging problems in my life than my past life. And yet, I'm able to deal with these very difficult challenges much better because I'm training my mind. And so for me, what I realized is that my brain is a muscle, my mind is a muscle to deal with life's challenges. And instead of just focusing on each challenge, what I instead try to do is I understand that my brain is a muscle. My brain is the solver of challenges. And what I do is I work on my brain and my mind every single day, so that when the next challenge comes, I'm already dealing with it rather than me just sort of living life and not training my mind and then me just getting drowned in my problems, because that's usually what happens. So I try to take a proactive approach. I try to take a preventative approach, right? Like just for an example, right? In America, the number one cause of death is basically health problems, which all have to do with your diet, would have to do with your food. So I'm a young guy, and instead of me saying like, hey, I'm just going to eat whatever I want, and then 30 years from now have, God forbid, like cancer or diabetes or heart disease, I would rather just eat healthy every day now so that I don't have these problems 30 years from now. So I always try to take a proactive and preventative approach, because that is always makes it easier in the end.
Very well said. What do you want to do when you grow up?
What I want to do when I grow up is what I'm doing right now. I hope personally for me, like I'm really trying to change the world and change the conversation around mental health. And so for me, I'm just trying to get associated with as many, organizations and companies that have the ability to bring it to a mainstream level to billions of people. So, I mean, I'm already doing what I want to do when I grow up, thank God. But I look forward to just contributing more in that direction.
Once you have a revenue generating idea, how do you convince your significant other?
Significant other is in like your wife or like your partner.
Yeah, if you have to convince somebody to get to next step, how do you do that?
Like in terms of like, wait, I just want to answer it. Like in terms of like a potential client, or is this like talking about like your business partner, or what does it mean by significant other?
Yeah, it could be your business partner or it could be your spouse.
Okay. Um, I don't know, man. I mean, I think like for example, I'm not married, but I have a girlfriend. And for example, last weekend, I was talking to my girlfriend and I was talking to her about actually this revenue generating idea. And she, for example, encouraged me to go for it. So I personally haven't had this problem, but I think I've had it with other people, other friends in my past. I think the reality is like, and this may not be a popular answer. I think the reality is that you have to get a clear head yourself in terms of get more clear. Obviously, don't do a dumb thing. But I think a lot of the times, like a lot of people can't see an idea except for you, and that's why that idea comes to you. So I think a lot of the times, instead of trying to convince your significant other, I think you should put in more work to understand the idea yourself and to then actually do it and start to see some success. And yeah, like and just like for example, like I remember when I was a kid, um, and like my parents, for example, they would always tell me, Mark, you have to study, you have to study, you have to study. And I got terrible grades. And then, I remember one of my businesses online started making like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And my parents literally went from, oh, like Mark is just doing random things on the internet. He should be in school to just like, you know what, Mark, keep doing what you're doing. So a lot of the times people can't see your idea. So I think you have to put in the work to make that idea possible. And then once it gets results, then your partner or whoever may be like, okay, wow. So I don't know if that answers the question to the best of my ability, but yeah, I tried.
Wonderful. So yeah, clarity is very important. I appreciate that you sharing that. So, what are you grateful for today?
That's a great question. I actually this I'm great. What I'm grateful for is this morning I actually got to go on a walk in the park with my dad, and I honestly don't spend that much quality time with my dad, so that was awesome. I'm very grateful for that.
Who is your living mentor and what is the impact they have on you?
That's a great question. I think I have so many different mentors, but someone who's popping in my head right now is before COVID, like literally right before COVID in March. I got the chance to sit down with this guy named Jay Shetty, and I don't know if you know who he is. He's very big online, and I remember being in my college dorm room in like 2015 or 16 and learning from Jay Shetty through Facebook and like learning about meditation. And when I got the chance to sit down with him and we got to talk for like over 2 hours on my podcast and me just meet him and talk to him and even be friends with him, it really is very impactful because I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that when you become like friends with certain people, it changes your brain, because what happens is if you spend time to them and you talk to them or you text them or you communicate with them again and again and again, and your brain kind of makes them your friend, it puts you on sort of an equal level. And then your brain is like, oh wait, if my friend Jay Shetty has like 5 billion views on Facebook and is like doing all this crazy stuff, then why can't I do that? And so I think that has been one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from specifically like Jay Shetty as my mentor, of like him just being a friend to me, has literally taught me that like I can actually do way more than I can imagine. And just, through my podcast, I've been able to become friends with so many amazing, successful people. And that's a huge lesson of just like when you're surrounded by these people and it's like, oh, this person's company makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year, or this does that, then your brain is like, oh, that's not a big deal. I can do the same thing. And so I think that's been one of the biggest effects, if that makes sense.
Wonderful. Why is being impactful important to you?
That's a great question. I think for me personally, like I like money, but I've never really been motivated by money. I think for me, impact is probably the most motivating to me because I have been able to truly experience just amazing moments in my life. Um, like truly just amazing moments that I impacted someone, and it just gives me an amazing feeling. Like for example, um, I was in the mall with my parents a while back, and we're walking in the mall, and then all of a sudden, this random guy comes up to me, and he's like, "Yo, are you Mark? I follow you on LinkedIn. I listen to your podcast." And him and I start having this conversation. And he starts telling me how 2 years ago he didn't even have a job, and then now he started a business and he started to take care of his mental health. And he used to have very severe anxiety, and he just would follow what I would say. And he was like, literally from the bottom of my heart, like, thank you for giving me my life back. And like when that happened to me, and I was just like with my parents, and it's happened more than once. It's just like these random moments that happen to you, and you're just like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was possible. And then when you start to like factor in the ability of the internet to hit thousands of people, if not millions of people, that's very, very, very exciting. And like I think part of the reason why is because personally for me in 2015, when I was depressed, when I was obese, when I was socially isolated, when I was even suicidal, I was impacted by other people. And so I think a lot of the times, like, if I never learned from those people, then where would I be? I'd probably be dead right now. And so then I think about it's like the same cycle. So it's like people face issues and then they try to help other people. And then those people then fix their issues and they try to help other people. Then those people fix those issues. And that to me is like the most important thing. That's like the most valuable part of life, in my opinion.
How do you start your day?
Um, I wake up. I wake up and what I try to do is like when I wake up and I'm in bed, I actually try to stay in bed and I actually just try to breathe. And that may sound weird, but I think a lot of the times like when I'm in bed, I just try to focus on inhaling air through my nose and exhaling air through my mouth. And I just like do this very simple breathing exercise. And when I do this for about 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, this actually wakes my brain up. And then what I do that after that is I just try to think about sort of like what I'm grateful for the day. That's how I try to start off my thoughts. I try to start thinking about like, okay, Mark, what am I grateful for? What am I grateful for that happened yesterday? What am I grateful for, just for today? Um, and that's usually how I start my day. And then of course I do all these other habits too. Like I meditate, I journal, I exercise, I go for walks. Um, so yeah, that's how I start my day.
Who is your ideal client?
My ideal client is someone who is feeling, maybe burnt out, stressed, nervous. They don't feel like they're that confident. They feel like they can never really be themselves in front of other people. And they want to improve their communication skills, their stress coping skills for them to, whether it's a leader who's going to give a meeting or a podcast host who's trying to give a talk successfully or a speaker. Those are my ideal clients.
How can we support you?
Oh man, what a great question. I think the best way people can support me is if people go to my website, which you've listed right here. Um, if people go to my website and you scroll down a little bit, you'll see an email inbox. And in that email inbox, if you put in your email, you're going to automatically sign up for my email newsletter. And basically every week I send out 2, 3, purely educational, informational posts all about how to deal with all the stuff that I talked about. And if you ever want to get in touch with me, if you get one of my emails and you respond to the email, it'll go directly to me. And I always respond to all those emails. So best way people can support me is just to like read my work and see what you can learn from it and reach out to me if you have any questions or anything I can help you with.
What would you say about your guest experience on the show?
On this show, this is I would say it's been good. It's been great. I really like the answer that the question, excuse me, that you asked me about impact, because that kind of got my mind to think in a different way. And yeah, the way that I think about these is honestly like I've been and I told you this yesterday. I've been a guest on over 300 different podcasts, radio shows, TV shows. And honestly, what I find is that every time where I'm a guest on one, as long as it doesn't suck, and this did not suck, this was awesome. I always find that I learned something. I always find that just the ability for someone to give me a space to just talk. I always learn things after. I'm like, wasn't able to connect those dots, but now I do. And I really think it's like a form of therapy, and so, so I loved it. This was so fun. And this is my first meeting on Wednesday. So I'm set up for success now.
What would you say as a final word?
That's a great question. For me on my podcast, what I always try to leave as the final word is I always try to leave people with a question, right? So I think for me, my question that I would ask your audience is just like, what are you going to do with this information that I just said? What are you going to do with this awareness, right? And as someone who's recorded over 500 podcast episodes, I know that the real value that people get is what they do after. And a lot of the times people think like, oh, I have to do everything that Mark says, or I have to like follow everything in a complex way. And a lot of the times it's just like doing one thing. Like if you can literally remember what's one thing that I said that was just naturally interesting, that's curious to you, and just try to learn more about it. Maybe practice it. Maybe reach out to me if you have any questions around it. So that would be my question. It'd be like, what did you learn from this, and what are you going to do about it right after this live stream ends?
Mark, thank you so much for your time and wisdom. On the behalf of Entrepreneur Empowerment Club and our entire team, we really appreciate you. I hope our path cross again with another amazing guest. Until then, you have a wonderful time.
Mohammed, you're the best. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone out there for watching and listening. I really enjoyed being here. Thank you, guys. This has been Mark Metry.